It is important to understand how to properly sample for DNAPLs and LNAPLs when using the HydraSleeve, because the type of sleeve used, its position in the well, and even where you discharge the liquid from will affect the sampling outcome. Chlorinated solvents, or DNAPLs, are dense, non-aqueous phase liquids that sink to the bottom of a well because they are denser than water. The opposite is true of LNAPL, or light, non-aqueous phase liquids, which tend to gravitate towards the top of a well screen. Both low flow and volume purging will vertically blend the water within the well screen to some extent, mixing the high DNAPL concentrations at the bottom and the lower concentrations near the top. The HydraSleeve, however, can take a continuous coarse sample without blending the water in the interval. However, the placement of the HydraSleeve is important. In a well with a 10-foot screened interval, a standard bottom-weighted HydraSleeve using a continuous pull will only sample the top 5-foot interval of the well screen. And by collecting a sample only from the upper half of the screen, there is a possibility of the sample being biased low for DNAPL concentrations that may be higher in the lower half of the well screen. Again, the opposite is true for LNAPL. So to sample for DNAPL, the best choice is to use a top-weighted HydraSleeve. The top of the HydraSleeve marks the bottom of the sample interval, so a top-weighted HydraSleeve will be as close to the bottom of the well screen as possible. In this example, we have added dye to the bottom of a demonstration well, in this case a 2-inch diameter 4-foot clear pipe. The dye represents DNAPL, and you can see it is separated from the clear water towards the top. At the bottom is the top weight of a compressed HydraSleeve, with the opening of the HydraSleeve at the top of the weight only a few inches off the bottom. When the HydraSleeve is recovered, the HydraSleeve takes very nearly a continuous core of the sample interval, with the dye on the bottom and the clear water at the top. So in this case, if we were sampling for DNAPL, we would produce a fairly representative sample of what is in the well screen. Another consideration is to make sure that you discharge your samples from the bottom of the HydraSleeve where the DNAPL is found. The opposite considerations must be made for LNAPLs. To demonstrate sampling for LNAPLs, we set up the same example column. In this case, the clear water would represent LNAPL that would be concentrated towards the top, and the dyed water would represent fresh water at the bottom. To sample for LNAPL, we deploy a bottom-weighted HydraSleeve and let its weight settle to the bottom. The top of the HydraSleeve, which will be the bottom of your sample interval, is now a little over 2 feet from the bottom of the well, in the lighter portion that represents the LNAPL. We use a continuous pull to recover the HydraSleeve and are able to get a sample that is predominantly LNAPL. As in the case of DNAPL, we want to make sure we puncture and discharge the HydraSleeve in the correct position. In the case of LNAPL, discharge at the top of the HydraSleeve instead of the bottom. In summary, when sampling for either DNAPL or LNAPL, make sure that you use the correct HydraSleeve, a top-weighted one for DNAPL and a bottom-weighted one for LNAPL. Also make sure that you puncture and discharge your sample from the correct part of the HydraSleeve, the bottom for DNAPL and the top for LNAPL. If you have any questions, feel free to call us at 1-800-996-2225 or email us at info@hydrasleeve.com.